the Women Unleashed podcast. Join us as we share with you the fun, confronting, wild, fucked up, epic, and raw side of being a woman in today's world. Nothing is off limits. Allow yourself to be inspired to be unleashed.
We acknowledge that we are recording our podcast on the traditional country of the Turrbal and Yagara people and pay respect to their elders past and present. We acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and contribution they make to this community.
Welcome to the Women Unleashed podcast. I have a very special guest with us today, Sandra. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. It's exciting for me to be here.
So Sandra and I, we met at the networking event run by BX a few weeks ago, and I was instantly magnetized to you. The way that you show up, your presence, your warmth, and I just heard a little snippet about what you do, and I just had to have another conversation.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. Yeah, terrific.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, it's always interesting, that question, because I never quite know where to start. Do I start right at the beginning, or do I just do a slice? I guess the overarching theme or story to my life has been a combination of business and human behaviour. And I say that because I grew up in a small business family. I was the kid. My father owned basically mixed, like a delicatessen, a 7-Eleven back in the 40s, 50s and 60s. And we grew up behind that shop. And I learned to serve customers at a very young age and go to the market, still the things you do. So I was very immersed in the world of small business right from the start. So it's always been a fascination for me. But then the other side of me was always fascinated by human behaviour. And so got through school, did some study, went to university, did some stuff around psychology and human behaviour, and worked in that area, particularly in mental health, for some time. But the calling to go back to business was a bit overwhelming, and I ventured firmly into my first official business, putting aside all those ones you have as a child. And
I had a hairspray business, by the way, at the markets. It lasted 1 week. Because the next week, the mother brought her child back and said, I can't get the hairspray off her scalp. And I was mortified. Oh,
my goodness, that's hilarious, a hairspray. But isn't that ingenuity, though? That's entrepreneurship right there, hey? And you can probably look back at those early stages and think, I had that part in me, that little spark in me to want to get out there and try stuff. So I had that as well. Went into business in my 20s. And I've been in and out of business for 40 years, 3 major ones along the way. And in the last one particularly, I did it because I wanted to start a family. So I knew didn't want to get a job. I wanted to start another business. And so I could be at home. I could be at home with my hopefully soon-to-be child. And so I did. And then that business really lasted for 14 years and supported me through that time to be a mum, the sort of mum I wanted to be, but also generate some income and some interest outside of motherhood and family. And then as Jackson got older, I put more effort in. And, of course, when he went to school, then things really accelerated. So I sort of know about the value of business and what it can bring, and also the struggles and challenges. I mean, it's not an easy ride, and it's certainly something that people don't appreciate or realise until they're in it. And then through that time, I was working with a lot of retailers and really noticing how I was supporting them to build their business. And when I sold that business, I then went overseas for a few years, came back and decided I wanted to be a coach and studied ontological coaching, which I know you know a little bit about, and with the view that I wanted to get really immersed in the world of what makes us tick and how we show up in the world and the results that we generate. And I was targeting business owners, and I do target female business owners and have been doing that for about 12 years. So it's a combination of really themselves as a leader, building their own business, building their own capabilities internally, and then also working on the business to get the maximum results So growing them as a business owner whilst growing the business alongside of that.
Incredible. Sandra, I love how, and you did that succinctly, like really, like, from childhood to now. It's just perfect. You may or may not have practiced that. Well done. Um, what I hear is that you've actually done what it is you're now coaching.
Exactly.
And which is what I look for in any kind of trainer or coach, or like accountant or lawyer, or like, are you doing what it is that you want to be doing with your money, or creating the type of life that you want to create? And when you said, I created a business so I could be a mum, like I rarely hear, I created a business so I could be a mum, and you created the business that would allow that to become possible.
Yeah, I think the key is always to know why you're doing it. I mean, it's the fundamental, the why question. If you don't really have a strong enough reason, it's pretty easy to bail on yourself, And for me, that was a classic example, because I knew I didn't want to go and get a job and be a mother. I wanted to be much more available to my son. And I didn't have a back door. There was no other option. So when things got really tough, and I started, from my house, and I was selling direct to retailers. There was a wholesale distribution company in the beginning. So I'd never sold really, actively out there and sold before. So I was selling, having to learn, but I had to do it. There was no default position that I could just bail. I was going to make this work. And it was a good couple of years with really hard work and not a lot of money. But slowly things started to pick up, and I managed to get both parts of what I was looking for, which was the time to be the mum, and then something that was engaging, exciting, interesting, and I could control, ideally, not always, but the growth of. So it was fine when it was small, when he was small, and then as I had more time, I could grow it and bring in resources and staff and those sort of things to grow it. But it was totally, of my making. I was the one that was driving the bus. I was the one that was creating this thing. So I made decisions around that to fit with what I had envisioned to meet those needs, and that why was to be the mother and the business owner together.
Yeah, to have it all. What came up for me when you were sharing, like, why it worked, was because you had a really solid place to stand, your why. And for me, why I'm now seeing my relationship works is because my stand is that, like, whatever I need to, break through or overcome or deal with in myself to have a really great relationship, I'm never going to go and do that again with someone else. Like, that's my stand. It's like, this is it. This is the one. I'm going to be responsible for it. And so my partner actually said to me last night, like, I know you're doing the work, because every time, we have a disagreement or a breakdown, that's where I go back to. I'm not going to another relationship just to come up against this thing in like 2 years. Not happening. So, and that's, it's really, really valuable.
Yeah. And what great learning, hey? It's being in that messy piece when things are difficult and challenging. That's where the learning is. And it's the learning about yourself, because you're right. We just go around and around in circles. You bail on one relationship, you go into the next relationship, the same issues emerge. Well, why is that? It's because of you. You're the common denominator there. So unless you keep learning, you're going to keep repeating.
Wow. And can you tell us a bit about what ontology is?
Yeah, so ontology is a branch of philosophy, and it really deals with, if I was going to say it really easily, it's reality. It's about how we generate reality. And there's different levels of reality, but, like, there's indisputable reality, like first level reality, gravity. We all agree gravity exists. Second order reality might be like, the currency system, where we've all collectively agreed that dollars, this $100 bill, even though it's probably worth about 5 cents in real value in terms of what it's made up from.
Material, yeah.
Material, we all agree it's worth $100. So collectively, we've made this decision to agree to this, even though if you look at it dispassionately, it's really worth about 5 cents, but we've agreed it's worth $100. But the area that's really fascinating, of course, is the third level of reality, which is where we make it all up. What we see in the world, how we show up in the world, how we interpret the world is all done internally, and we do it through our senses, through our language, our thoughts and language, so thoughts and spoken word. We do it through our emotions, our moods and emotions. So that informs us. We make decisions about the world based on our moods and emotions. And, of course, also through the body, how the body responds, and that includes the nervous system. So all this information is coming at us, and what do we do with it? Now, you and me will make totally different interpretations from the same data coming at us. And then we will both respond differently, depending on many factors. And so it's how you can have a realisation that we're making it up. Really, at the end of the day, we're just making it up. And how can we best interpret that, be aware of how we're making it up, and then really be in the most resourced position to show up the way we want to show up, to create what we want to create. It has to come from in here. It has to come from internally first. It's internal work, external work. And I guess a simple way to demonstrate that would be, those magical moments when you walk into a room and someone comes in after you, and clearly there's something going on because they just attract a lot of attention. There's something about them. There's the poise, the posture, the energy, whatever it is, who knows. And people are drawn to them, and you get to talk to them, and they've created incredible things in their life. Not everything's perfect, and there's challenges. It doesn't matter who you are. We all go through that. We're all human. We're all fallible. We all make mistakes. None of that. But this person, whoever it is, has got some essence that the way they show up is very attractive to others, and from that opportunities arise. So they have conversations that maybe others wouldn't have. They meet people that maybe others wouldn't meet. They make connections, and as we know, most things happen because of relationships, and on it goes. So their way of being was really very, in just a little scenario, they're very congruent with who they are, often very authentic with who they are, very vulnerable with who they are, generally quite willing to put it out there and say, here I am, because that's very appealing for people to know that. Mm-hmm. And, of course, their effectiveness is very powerful, and the results they can generate. So that's a bit of a long example, but ontology at its very foundation is about the stories we're living in and how we can define those stories and then be aware of them, because some of them really hold us back. Some of those stories are chains around our ankles. We can't move past that. We're really stuck. How can we look at that as a bit of a separation, just look at it more objectively, and then take some responsibility to act differently, be differently, and do some stuff that can support you to show up differently.
I've never heard anyone create it like that. So thank you. I loved it. I was just lapping it all up. That was amazing. And I'm sure our listeners would have really understood that as well.
Good, because it's not an easy concept. It's an unusual word, and people don't understand it. What is it about? But thank you. That's good to hear.
Mm-hmm. And if I was to replay what that third level is, it's first, there's two pieces to it. First is being aware of actually what those stories are, mm-hmm. catching them, and then creating new stories that mm-hmm. actually empower you or work for you, or mm-hmm. Create the life that you want to create. So creating that a reality.
Yeah, that's it. A new reality.
Yeah, the automatic one that's already there.
Yeah, for sure. So that sort of leads into some of those self-sabotaging thoughts that come up that do keep us anchored and stuck, the same stories that we keep replaying, and it feels like Groundhog Day because we've got very habituated ways of operating and ways of thinking that hold us, basically sabotage us, and we don't show up in the way that we'd like to because of these old patterns, old habits. So the first step is absolutely awareness. You've got to be aware that it's happening because some people just are on autopilot and have no awareness and therefore can be really at the effect of everything that comes to them, thinking they've got no control over it. They think it's just all happening to me. I can't affect what's going on. I've got no impact on what's going on. I can't change anything. I've got no power. I'm stuck. I'm here because it's all coming at me, So you've got to first understand that, no, you're making it up at the end of the day. You're interpreting it in that way. You're interpreting it in that way. So that's awareness. Take a step back and notice that. But the next step really is what's really important, because awareness only goes so far. We can be aware of it, but we still can't change the habits. We still can't change the responses because
I think sorry to interrupt there for a second. I think we've all come across people that are like, yeah, I'm aware I do that, but they're just not they're actually not responsible for it, even though they're aware that they're doing whatever they're doing.
Yeah. Or they don't have enough care to want to change it. So when people say, oh, yeah, I'm aware I'm doing that, but there isn't enough care to want to change it. So they're happy to keep doing it and keep getting the same results. So they're just happy in that place. Nothing's going to change until you care enough.
Yeah, something's at stake, Yeah. Amazing. And you were, sorry, I interrupted you, and then you were on this little flow, and I wanted you to keep going there as well.
What was I flowing on? Yes,
the awareness, like that. Yeah, what do you do after that? Because I think what Taylor and I do a great job of on this podcast, and to all of our listeners, you can let us know. And we've had some feedback that we're really great at bringing people's awareness to how they're actually showing up and in life. And what I know has kept me stuck in the past is I've made it wrong. Like I've become aware and then I've made it wrong. And it takes a lot to stop making it wrong to then move on to the next thing, which is kind of what you're going to talk about.
Yeah. So that's an interesting concept, because I think there's always two sides to anything, and sometimes our greatest weakness is also our greatest strength. So when we have the habitual ways of operating, there is some great strength in that. So, for example, let's say you're an avoider, just generally. You avoid things because they're uncomfortable and they're painful, and you don't want to step off the ledge because you don't know what's coming. You have a strategy around avoiding. Yeah. I can relate to this. That's why I picked avoider, because I can avoid.
Yes. Right? Yeah, good, awesome. Me too.
Yeah, I can avoid. Now, why is that a strategy? Well, I learnt early that was a way for me to stay safe. So you can understand, if I just backed away from a problem or an issue or something that was difficult and protected myself, I would become safe. Well, that's fair enough. Now, the strength in that is I can be very accommodating. I can go with the flow. I can be quite flexible. I can adjust myself quite easily. And that's a strength of, if you like, that tendency to want to avoid. It's just because I have this overdeveloped avoider strategy that gets me stuck. So there's a strength to it, and you don't want to make it wrong. It's just something you've developed over many years. I've developed over many years that sometimes is fine, because I just can be very malleable, and I can fit in and work out different ways of operating. I'm very like that. That's okay. That's a strength. But the difficulty is if I overuse it and I avoid what needs to be handled, then it's a weakness. So I've got to work out ways. Once I'm aware of it, here I am. I'm avoiding this. Okay. Should I avoid it? Do I want to avoid it? No, I don't want to avoid it. What am I going to do to learn other ways of operating that will groove in new pathways, really, that will have me take action?
And what are some of those ways that you've developed for yourself?
Yeah. So in the case of the avoider, a very simple thing to do. Really, if I go through the whole process, the first step, you've got to notice it. So I've got, here I am, I'm avoiding. Okay, so I've got to take a moment and just pause. So this is putting a break in there. So it's a bit of a break between seeing it and then responding. So that moment allows me to view it more objectively. And the break could be, doing some breathing, doing some mindfulness, just practice something for a couple of minutes just to really get me, okay, I'm avoiding it. Let me get right to the present moment. And then I need to think about, well, how can I activate myself? How can I actually take that step and get activated? And the simplest thing for me is I just write a list of things I'm avoiding. So what am I avoiding? And I just write them down. And then I pick one of them. And it doesn't have to be the hardest one. It can be the simplest one. And I just commit to doing it. And my example was last week I was avoiding, I had it on my list, I was going to write something on my LinkedIn post. I was going to write something and I just kept rolling it over to the next day. I never got to it, because that stuff sort of, it's a bit of a chore for me. But I'm going to do it. And then I saw it on my list and I thought, okay, I'm just going to commit to doing it. And I got it done in 10 minutes. Now, the thing is, I'd spent probably 4 days using my limited mental capacity avoiding something that took 10 minutes that really wasn't a big deal. But I'd used a lot of horsepower avoiding it. And getting it done was like, oh, God, that's great. That's off my plate. Let's move on.
And you're empowered because you're like, oh, I did the thing that I didn't want to do.
I did the thing. Yeah. And it is that sort of working out some little strategies to keep you moving in the direction you want to be moving into and away from those habituated sort of ways of operating. And a lot of this comes from, I'm also a positive intelligence coach. I've done the training. So a lot of this comes from that. The guy that created this, Shazad Sharmin, he's a New York best-selling author, and he's got a whole framework around working with what he calls the saboteurs. So the things that self-sabotage your behaviour, and then creating a way to move forward by developing new habitual patterns. And it's done using technology, using an app, by using reminders and little processes 3 times a day to allow you, to have you move from those avoiding or those sabotaging strategies, not just avoiding, there's about 10 of them, into a place where the brain is more settled, emotions are more calmer, and you're just more laser focused, basically, and you can make better decisions.
Right. So this is the 6-week program that you were telling me about.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Share a bit more.
It's really powerful. And why it's powerful is it's simple. He's done a lot of research, and he's sort of brought in things from neuroscience, positive psychology, sports psychology, performance psychology, a lot of stuff. And he's brought in elements to that and sort of distilled it down into some fundamental factors. And he's created the technology that allows people not just to have the awareness, which is what we spoke about, that's the first step, but most importantly to learn new behaviours and ways of thinking that will give you different options to move forward with. And it's through repetition. So all new behaviours have to be through repetition. So you have an app, it's a 6-week program, there's a weekly video, and then there's little reminders on your app with an email to do some 2-minute exercises, and that will shift you to a more powerful place. And you can imagine after 6 weeks of doing this repetition, you're in a whole different place. And the results are really around performance, increased performance, better relationships, and better health and well-being. So a very, very interesting program, very simple, not complicated, but very, very, very effective.
Yeah, I mean, the best things are quite simple.
Yeah, that's right.
The most effective are generally quite simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible. I love that there's an app so that at any point in the time, like you can choose where your 15 minutes happens.
Yeah.
And you can choose how you consume it. There's a lot of the action focus rather than just creating
That's
the
right.
awareness.
That's right. And, again, it's been going for quite some time. So the results, speak for themselves, I guess. And I personally have had great value out of it. And what I love, it was just that piece in my business that I couldn't anchor easily for business owners. And this is it. This is the foundational piece to go through. Because if we can get the 6 weeks, go through the 6 weeks, what I call mental fitness training.
The boot camp, the mental fitness, yes.
It's a boot camp. Oh, I like that. I'm going to use that. So it's a boot camp as the first step. Let's get you mentally tuned up, because what we know about going into business or building your business or breaking through the next level in business is that you can't be the same person that you were that got you to that first place. So, the old saying, what got you here won't get you there. We've got to tune you up. And that's all about your mental fitness. And then when we've got that really tuned up, we can accelerate. We can see things more clearly. It's much easier to have those conversations around those blockages, and then we can break through. And great things can happen because it's actually coming, of course, from you as you drive that business externally.
And that's such an important point. Like, what got you here won't get you there. It's one of the pitfalls of success is that you sort of stay there and go, well, I've made it, and when in fact, if you're not going forwards, you're going backwards. So I often do get frustrated when I'm nudging that next level, and then I'm there, and then I'm like, oh, okay, this is all it is. I was making it out to be like something, really, really scary, ridiculous, and then okay, I've got to go again and again and again, because that's like I'm up to playing a really big game, like I'm going to go to the Olympics for equestrian, and like it's just going to take that. But for everyone, it's really important to be aware of once you've made that one level, if you want to take it to the next, it's going to take the same, if not more, amount of discomfort and learning and training and patterns and behaviours and
Yeah, so it sounds like you're a very good learner. And the other thing it tells me is you're very good at recovery. And why I say recovery is what I know. I've worked with hundreds of businesses, and it's about your recovery time. At the end of the day, it's how quickly you can recover. So, if you think about elite athletes or business owners, like for me, I played tennis. That was my sport when I was younger.
I love tennis.
Yeah. It was my sport. I was very competitive at it. It was my world for a long time. And I think about those years, and, I trained and I worked hard at it, and I played, in state competitions. And I remember the times, if I hit the ball into the net more than a few times, I'd get so annoyed with myself. I'd so frustrated. But the thing is, if I was an elite athlete, that 1% of the 1%, if you notice them, so I love the tennis, I watch the tennis, what they do when they hit the ball into the net, they just absolutely take a breath, bounce the ball 4 times and realign. They've just let it all go that mistake, and they're totally focused on the moment, the next, where they are right now. And all that energy, emotion, physical tension has gone, and they're ready for the next step. And it's really quick. So their recovery time is almost immediate. Whereas for me, my recovery time wasn't immediate. I'd be hanging on to that feeling for days sometimes if I blew it badly. I wasn't opposed to stamping on tennis balls and throwing rackets. Truly. So I really hung on to it. So my recovery time wasn't great. And I think, if you can get that concept, is when those upsets, disappointments in business, if we talk about business, when you lose that great customer or don't make that great sale, or you spend a lot of money on marketing and it doesn't work, how quickly can you learn from it, like yourself, how quickly can you learn from it and recover and come back on track and stay laser focused on why you're there in the first place and move forward. So recovery time is super important. And I think you've got that.
I'm so taking that. I love that the recovery time, it's just created like this game for me.
Yeah.
Right, we're on the court. How long are we going to give ourselves to recover from this one? Let's go,
And some people don't recover. You know, some people just hang on to stuff forever, for a long time, and it doesn't serve them. So again, you've got to ask the question, you know, why? What, for the sake of what? Why are we doing that? Why do we want to hang on to something? And that's an exploration, really, to find out more about that for people.
Magic. Well, Sandra, I think a lot of our listeners would or should be interested, like, in what you do, in the services that you offer and the programs, and how best should they get in touch or learn more about you? Because if I could send everyone, you know, either to like a landmark program or to someone like you, I would. So this is my, like, you know, good deed. How do we get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the easiest way, of course, is just to go to my website. So it's Essentia, ESSENTIA, Essentia Coaching.com.au, and you'll see a lot of information. You'll see my husband there, by the way, because he's also a coach. So we are a coaching family.
Oh, look at him. I can see it now. And we'll put that in the show notes too, so no one has to remember that. Yeah.
And the other thing, if people are very fascinated by this mental fitness program, there's a really interesting, quick, easy saboteur assessment you can do. It's free. It's really great. You go to the essentiacoaching.com.au, find the tab mental fitness at the top, do the saboteur assessment, and you're going to learn a lot about yourself in 10 minutes. You're going to find out what are your top saboteurs that get in the way of you often over and over and over again. So do that, and tell me how you go.
I will. I'm so going to do that. That's fantastic. And everyone of our listeners who does it, please post, like, you know, whether what you got and whether it surprised you or not, or we'd love to know.
It's a lot of fun because people will either go, oh yeah, of course, you know, yeah, I know that, or they'll be totally surprised by it. And it's a wonderful conversation starter because it does give some awareness around potentially those self-sabotaging behaviours. So yeah, go for it.
Fantastic. Well, Sandra, thank you for coming on our podcast today, and thank you everyone for listening. You know, we hope you get a lot of value out of listening today, and also sharing what you got with your, you know, girlfriends, mums, sisters, brothers, husbands, to share on that learning. And one of our goals is to be Australia's #1 women's empowerment podcast. So please, you know, share the podcast, leave a review, leave a 5-star rating, or follow us on Instagram. Bye for now.
See ya.
Before you go, I really want to let you know that Taylor and I have been working on our free ebook so you can learn how to possibility shop. It'll be available in the next month, so keep an eye out on our Instagram so you can download it straight away. Happy possibility shopping!